gentleman who was adamant that human trafficking is not taking place in Jamaica. And when I relayed to him my experiences, when I told him my story, he still did not believe. He was saying that no, there is no way. And it happened right in the middle of Kingston. I mean, right in the center. And he was saying, no way, that don't happen. And so for me now, whoever had that experience of being in this place for so long and seeing girls come and go, knowing girls that have gone missing, every time there's an item of news of a young lady that goes missing, my mind goes back to wonder if, if she's in one of these places, wonder if we're going to hear that her body is found in this place or not, because I know that this is what takes place on our streets. And so for me, education should be ongoing. It should not be something that is just we do it once a month or once every 2 months. It is something that should be in the newspapers, on our local television, running ads and so on. So I just think that there is so much more that can be done because the education needs to be out there because persons don't believe that there is such a thing as human trafficking. Persons don't believe. And more often than not, human trafficking ends up with sex trafficking because you are in this space and you just have to do whatever they tell you to do. And often than not, it is performing sexual favors.
Yeah, and I would just like to add that I think, what everyone is saying and just like what Owen shared, I just think, a lot of the education, like she was just sharing, a lot of the education that needs to take place is about tearing down really harmful gender norms about women specifically, although a lot of boys and men are also trafficked, but especially with children, when it's sex trafficking, they're very typically women, and that's how they're groomed and recruited. And there's just these very harmful norms for that young lady to go to a police officer and in his mind, well, you're a female, so therefore you're a sexual object, so you should be able to get something using that. Belies a very harmful social construct that we have to work to break that down before we can get support, full-fledged support for a lot of what we're doing. And that's not just in, places like Jamaica and Liberia, that's the same in the United States. We really have to work to break that down when we are constantly bombarded with very sexual images of women, of children. It becomes a natural thought in people's minds, and we have to work, against that. And, part of what we're working to do at Lydia House while we're waiting for the funds to build our home is we have an educational program, and part of what we want to do is help people to create a reporting framework for their organization, whether it's an NGO or a government organization or an educational facility or a missionary operation, any of those. We want them to create a small reporting framework for people who are being sexually harassed or who have been assaulted that takes the victim seriously and doesn't protect the perpetrator, because that's the biggest issue in a lot of these cultural settings. The perpetrator is actually protected. They'll say, well, you're just a girl, but he's a man that's important in our community, or he's a pastor, or he's an elder. And you don't want to make this accusation, you could ruin his career. I mean, we deal with this in the United States, obviously, just as much. We've seen the fallout from it when you have a powerful male and then someone who is less powerful that's being exploited. And so that's why I think we need to work to open people's eyes. As you're saying, there will always be people who don't believe you, but a lot of people, once their eyes are open, are willing to shift the way that they run their organization in order to say, hey, maybe something is happening and we want to be on the side of the person who's being exploited and defend them and take this perpetrator out. So that's the shift that we really have to push toward before we can make progress in clamping down on this, rather than criminalizing or incriminating the person who's being trafficked as if she were a criminal because she's doing this.
Thank you for sharing. That was well said. Now, as far as there's obviously no solutions for something so widespread, but what I'm going to ask each organization is, what are some of the weapons or tools that we can sharpen and put into motion to start actually, putting up the fight that we need. For me, I'm thinking along the lines, at least, here in the US, and I'm only pretty much familiar with Michigan and Colorado, because those are the two states that, that I've worked at. I'm thinking more along the lines of getting media attention from large, large newspaper companies. In Michigan, they have like Fox 2, they have WDIV. Now for Lydia House, what kind of, what strategies do you have as far as bringing the awareness and kind of shining a spotlight on the current situation?
Yeah, as I said, part of what we're doing is we are developing, this program will be developed pretty soon in the next couple of months. It's a curriculum, basically. We're calling it Speak Out. And
Speak Out, you said?
Speak Out, yeah. And it is a curriculum that we're developing. And my hope is that I can put the PDF of this book on our website and people can download it and use it for their ministries or their organizations sort of all over the world. And what it will be is a short, maybe 15 to 20 page curriculum that explains sexual abuse, sexual assault, harassment, coercion, extortion, exploitation, and all of these faces of sexual abuse, because most people really just think of it as sexual assault, like violent rape. And there's so many other things that are comprehended in that term that we need to crack down on if we're going to protect these victims. And it will also include a lot of information about not stigmatizing trafficking victims, because most of them are also victims of abuse beforehand. And what we will do is we'll have volunteer facilitators who will teach this material in, say, like a 1-hour seminar to local leaders who are either NGO workers or missionaries or educators or government workers. And it will include information on how to create a reporting framework in your organization. But the idea is that then we give those people the booklets for free, and they have this information. And we hope that even in that short 1-hour time, we will begin to open people's eyes to things that really pass below most people's radar just by pointing them out. And I believe in this program. I've done this type of work with some organizations here in the United States, and it's very effective, because I would say the majority of people don't. There are always people that will say, "Oh, I don't believe in that," but I really believe 9 out of 10 people look and they say, "Wow, I had no idea this was going on. I care about this. I'm going to take this with me to my organization. I'm going to change the norms that are in place, and I'm going to take action. I'm going to pay attention to things that I didn't notice as red flags before."
Thank you, Margaret. Now, for those of you that have read the chat on the bottom, please share your social media info so we can follow. I always believe there's power in numbers, there's power in unity. So as we continue to shine the spotlight in human and sex trafficking, it's good for, our various organizations to, share some of our resources and put the message out there. Even though COVID-19 has created some challenges, at the same time, organizations are able to connect a lot quicker than they used to, just simply hopping on a Zoom or Blue Jeans platform, share ideas and brainstorm. And with that being said, Pursuit International, do you have any strategies in mind?
Unmute myself, that would be crucial. You mentioned one of the ways that we definitely engage with awareness, and that is using media, whether it's social media or traditional media. We engage with young people. Our recent new intern is a young lady from a local high school. And so we're hoping that by engaging with young people and having them share about what's going on, then more persons will be not only aware, but mobilized to take action. We also, myself and you've met Del Marine, we try to go onto various radio and TV platforms to share the story, because nothing is as pulling as a story. Like this is a real person that it happened to. I'm not just making up a story. I'm not just reading a statistic, which is very powerful for some people. But I also think it's very powerful to hear, listen, I read the article. I thought it was legitimate and I went, because I've heard persons not understand what even causes them to get involved and what causes them to stay. So humanizing, as was said earlier by the representative from Lydia House, that you humanizing the reality and making persons really see that is happening. So we do a lot of awareness in schools and on social media, on traditional media. And our hope is to create something that persons can use to see the signs, like a video. We're creating that right now, a video that will lay everything out very quickly so that persons can share it, whether it's we're on YouTube, so we're trying to create a YouTube channel where persons can see it from a local standpoint. Because again, up until I went to, but the Lord led me to Asia and brought me back home and showed me it happening here. All I knew about trafficking was a Taken movie with Liam Neeson. So I figured the only way you got trafficked is somebody kidnapped you, and that's it. So I really think that's what we utilize, using social media and traditional media.
Thank you, Stacy-Ann. Cast the wave.
Yeah, so we do something similar. It's interesting that you guys are all talking about things that are kind of in development. And I think that's just because people are finally listening more than before. So we have the ability to use these other ways. And honestly, I think video sometimes with kids is much more effective. Their attention spans don't last long. So a long speech or an explanation really doesn't hit home for them. In the state of Florida, they now require that all kids kindergarten through 12th grade are educated on human trafficking in our public schools, which is really, really exciting. And it gives us an opportunity as an organization to partner with our local schools to provide that information, to help them, come up with ways to teach younger kids without actually having to use the words sex and human trafficking and things like that, but also just teaching them how to recognize when someone's trying to trick them into something, or what to do if someone approaches them that they don't know, and things like that. But really, so using our platform, we've helped schools develop clubs, human trafficking clubs. And actually one of our local schools, it was the biggest club they've ever had. The biggest turnout they've ever had was human trafficking club. And they tell stories of survivors and then have discussions, which is amazing. So I think kids are really kind of the answer for this for me is, spotlighting those children because they want to stay safe. None of them want this for themselves. So teaching them before it ever hits that point is kind of key, as well as, like you guys mentioned with the media. So we've shifted. We used to do more traditional media. We did tons of news interviews. And what we realized was that we weren't reaching the children. We were reaching the parents and the older adults that were going, we want to do something, but I don't know how this whole social media thing works and whatever, like it's just too much to handle. And it's a lot to wrap your mind around. And so we have transferred over to mostly social media, just because it gives us the opportunity to really connect with those that are at risk. In the United States, the average age of someone being taken into sex trafficking is between 12 and 14 years old. And usually for girls, and for boys, it's 11. So we're really targeting that younger age range so that we can keep them from ever being trafficked in the first place. So that's kind of some of the ways that we have spotlighted it, but then also using, our legislative voice and speaking up for them and saying, hey, something's got to change. Our laws need to catch up with the times because they're not caught up yet.
Thank you, Karissa. With each podcast episode, I like to conclude with advice from our speakers for youth on the topic of the episode. So we'll start back off with Pursuit International. What advice would you have for a young person that that's trying to escape their current condition